it's bull or bear, I don't care. It's quite a rough ride, just like life. But I'm kind of patient, 'cause only time will tell. It's gonna go up, so you better stay calm. Grow your coins, you gotta grow your coins. Grow your coins, grow your coins. Grow your coins, you gotta grow your coins. Grow your coins, grow your coins. Grow your coins, you gotta grow your coins. Grow your coins, grow your coins. You gotta grow your coins.
What's up, everybody? We're live. We finally made it. We're here. JD looks like he's getting his phone situated. It's crazy that his phone actually looks better than his laptop does. Can you hear me okay, JD?
I hear you good. How you guys doing?
Good. Okay, cool. JD, Seraphine, film producer, all around good guy. Looks like he's struggling here. We'll give him a minute. We've just been, this whole morning is like, I'm not even gonna lie, people. I just woke up like 15 minutes ago. I was up so late, and I'm up later and later every night because of all the stuff that I work, and I get so much more done at night. What time is it where you? I don't even know where you are right now, JD.
I'm in LA, so it's like 9:25.
Oh wow, so it's even earlier for you. Are you an early riser, or are you up late and just doing your thing?
Well, I mix it up. I got kids, but I also like to work late because sometimes for creative stuff, I feel like when the world calms down a little bit, it's easier to focus on some of the more creative things.
I do my best stuff late at night, especially if I'm like in half a zombie mode, because for whatever reason, I can think so much more clearly, and that's when I get my best ideas, and that's where I don't know, just better at night. So now I met you back in, what was it? Daytona Beach, at the NASCAR race. That was the first time I think we ever met or talked or anything.
Yeah, so we met. I was there with the Dragon Chain team because I've been working with Joe and those guys for over a year. Actually, Joe's an amazing guy, and they're doing some really cool stuff with their tech platform. But we started producing media for them last year. We filmed a little bit of their corporate stuff, but then more importantly, we started actually shooting like a reality unscripted series about Dragon Chain and Joe and everything they've gone through as a US based company that did an ICO, 14 months ago, or actually it was about 18 months ago now. But and you guys could imagine what that might entail. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but we actually have some interest from a really big TV network on that right now, and we're finalizing distribution on that. So hopefully that will be coming out in the fourth quarter of this year. So we've produced, actually, before we get into Atari movie, we've produced like 3 different unscripted docuseries / not reality shows, but I'd say they're either more of a straight documentary series or more of kind of a hybrid docuseries reality show series on some various blockchain and crypto related companies and people. So we have the one with Joe and his company, and then a couple others that we haven't announced publicly that also we're finalizing distribution on, that we'll be announcing, making announcements on soon. So
one of them I think I know about, right?
I think you know about 2 of them. Well, you know about the Dragon Chain one because you were there, and we filmed an interview with you at the track there as well.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to say anything because if it's all hush hush, I wasn't going to say anything. But yeah.
No, it is and it isn't. Like, obviously we could talk about it, but some of the other ones I haven't really said anything publicly about yet, just because they're involving high profile people. And we don't want to say anything until we're ready to make formal announcements. But I mean, the goal of me doing it was, and this kind of can segue, I guess, naturally into how did I get into blockchain or what brought me into the space. And about 2.5 years ago, my company Vision Tree, along with some partners, acquired the rights to the Atari movie from Paramount. So basically, it's the story of Nolan Bushnell, who was not only the founder of Atari, but one of the godfathers of the whole digital technology revolution. So before there was Apple, before there was Microsoft, there was Nolan Bushnell creating digital technology in form of the first commercial video games. But while he was doing that, he had a team that was innovating and doing all kinds of cool stuff. He had Steve Jobs and Wozniak incubating the personal computer inside of Atari before they created Apple.
I
They
didn't
had a
know that.
team of So if you look at the history of Apple and Steve Jobs and Wozniak, there you'll find that the first parts for the first Apple computers came from Atari. Um, and so they got there. He kind of incubated Apple in a sense. He actually had an opportunity to buy a third of Apple for $50,000, but he wasn't allowed to because he had left Atari and he had a non-compete clause
Mm.
with his corporate partners there. But even if you talk to him about it today, he would tell you he wouldn't have invested because at that time Jobs wasn't ready as a CEO to lead a company. Which he was right. I mean, it took Jobs going through some growing pains and leaving Apple and then coming back and reinventing himself, and then he became, obviously the icon that he's become. But so there's that, and then he also had something that was actually kind of cooler and more obscure in a sense. He had a team of engineers building a system where video gamers could play games over the high speed telephone lines at the time with each other. And you're talking like the mid to late 70s. So it would have been the first commercial version of the internet. And I always joke because Warner Brothers came in and bought a controlling share of Atari, which is in the film. And when they did, they killed some of the innovative programs, including that one. So I always joke with the Warner Brothers execs, like, you guys, you passed on the internet. So um, so that's what brought me into. So as we acquired the project, I was looking at, okay, what is the right holistic DNA for this movie? And as we looked at it, I said, look, there's 2 to 3 billion gamers around the world, depending on who you talk to, and I want to get that community excited and invested in this film as I had done in the past with some smaller independent documentaries and stuff that I did. And so I looked at equity crowdfunding and it just didn't have, it just was missing some of the dynamic qualities that we're looking for. And ultimately, when we looked at, I had a friend say, have you thought about doing an ICO to fund the movie? And I was like, I don't want to swear. I was like, what the F is an ICO?
Right.
So I Googled, and of course, it was the day that the CEO of Mozilla, raised $30 million in 30 seconds, for the Brave platform. And I was literally turning to my friend, I'm like, this is crowdfunding on steroids. So that took me down the rabbit hole. But as I got into the technology and into the community, it's weird. Immediately, I kind of felt like it was these were my people. It was my community, even in some ways more than the film or entertainment world. And my real passion is about making impact in the world through media and technology. Media, telling stories and creating media that shifts the way that people think and see the world, and then technology having a direct impact on the world we live in. And so as soon as I looked at the technology, I was like, this has the potential to solve so many problems and to help humanity essentially scale into solving all these myriad of like major issues and crises that we're facing. So once I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm in, and what can I do to kind of be of service to the larger movement of blockchain technology and the community at large? And so I started producing media because that's one of the things that we know how to do and we know how to do well. So we developed a couple unscripted shows as a start kind of into that process to say, there's a story that we feel like isn't effectively being told. Although I think we're starting to get some traction, which is, again, this technology is, there's innovators all over the world that are already using this technology and building solutions to major problems using the technology. And there's already major corporations, I'm sure, as like Maersk, saving hundreds of millions of dollars, using blockchain technology to optimize efficiency in its supply chain for shipping. I mean, that's just one major one, but there's use cases all over the world. So it's not like, does this technology work or does it not? Like, we're way past that point. Now it's a question of where can it be applied most effectively. So just to come back to our original thought, that's what brought me into the space and got me excited about producing media to help get the word out about the other side of the movement. There's a lot of FUD about, dark web and Silk Road and, Eastern European hackers in a dark room, like using Bitcoin for the sex trade or whatever. I mean, there's all that kind of negative innuendo that has been
Well,
flying around and
and a lot
all
of
the
that's
FUD,
probably true to some degree, obviously. I mean,
Well,
but
there's some truth to it, but the reality is there is such a large and growing movement of people and large companies that are doing amazing things with the technology. So our goal is essentially with media to help spread the awareness around that side of it. And of course, look, there's no it's not all roses and it's not all good. I mean, like anything, there's a trade off. But my point was, I saw, as many people did, I'm sure, is when the SEC came out in late 2017, early 2018, and the mainstream media, and in my opinion, there was a drumbeat that started that continued for quite some time. That was very consistent and it was very negative. And honestly, it drove the crypto market into what people are terming the crypto winter. It didn't happen by accident. It was a coordinated, in my opinion, purposeful move by certain players or certain groups that felt threatened, by what they saw happening with this movement. And so when I saw that happening, my natural response was, well, we're going to create media that's gonna be the counterpunch or the counterattack to that, and that's essentially what we've been doing.
so so you came into this whole film, this whole Atari movie idea, and you started thinking, okay, well, obviously blockchain is a big deal. A lot of people are doing some really well crowdfunding different projects. Where I've read through your deck and just kind of, I know more about the background of the movie and what the goal is and so forth. But ultimately, this whole project is about enabling the public, in a sense, to own a part of a major motion picture. I mean, is what it boils down to. How exactly is that being facilitated through crypto?
So yeah, and that's a good question. So the security token landscape. So when I got into the space, I was fortunate to be in this kind of LA West Side tech community where people like Brock Pierce, Michael Turpin, other people were already around me that were heavyweights that have been in this space for a long time. Were kind of there advising me to say, look, everybody's moving towards SEC compliant security tokens. This was already by the time I got deep into my due diligence and kind of discovery process or down the rabbit hole, we're talking like summer of 17, going into fall of 17. And so they were like, look, don't even bother trying to do an ICO with a utility token for this movie. If you want people to have a stake in the film, and that was our goal, was like, look, especially with Leonardo DiCaprio producing, we're like, we can't, and his company, we can't really do some sort of, hey, you just get like a t-shirt and a hat and a thank you, like, for giving us money. Like, that doesn't really, in my opinion, the value proposition of that is just not as strong. We wanted to give gamers, Atari fans, and people in the crypto and blockchain community the opportunity to own a small piece of the film. And so that, by definition, already pushed us into the security token world, which at that moment was, or digital securities, as it were, because that's the nomenclature that attorneys like us to use now.
Right.
But that already pushed us into that direction. Now the that was a good and a bad thing in a sense, or a blessing and a curse. And the hard part of it, or the challenge, is that at that time the ecosystem was so new, and it's still very new when it comes to digital securities, security tokens. But at that time there wasn't anything. It was like there was a couple groups running around, and honestly, I've been through a process of vetting and engaging almost every major group in the space that you could think of, and it's taken us a long time to find the right partner and partners and to develop that strategy. But ultimately, what we're doing is really simple. I mean, we're taking those shares that typically investors could buy, and we're tokenizing, and we're using a digital security so that for, say, unaccredited investors, under a Reg CF, they'll be able to participate and earn / invest in those tokens. For other investors that are accredited or non-US guys, they're able to get in access to an opportunity we're talking about a studio level production. We're not talking about a small indie movie that's like $1 million or a couple $1,000,000. We're talking about a $40 million approximately production budget, and a large P&A budget. So we're talking about a worldwide theatrical film. That's not the kind of opportunity that's usually offered out to the mainstream public or smaller investors to get in at a more reasonable level. Like that's typically the kind of opportunity that's reserved for large funds, big Chinese investors, things like that, which there are those kind of groups that are participating in the fundraise. But ultimately the goal was to democratize to a degree that opportunity.
Now
So
you
we're
say
doing that,
non-accredited, which is actually a really big deal for most, because let's face it, not many people in the crypto space are accredited. What sort of benefits, or what is the difference between the benefit packages between accredited investors and the non-accredited in terms of what they can acquire and what they get out of it?
So the only difference in terms of that is the amount of the level they'll be able to participate at. And honestly, I don't like it. Like I think it's actually kind of garbage. Like I think it was originally created with good intention in terms of protecting people at a time when there was a lot of scams. And not to say there isn't scams today, but I'm more. There's some things that I lean a little more libertarian on, or I lean a little more like let people be free to learn and make their own choices,
Right.
and obviously regulate and go after bad actors who are scamming people, but don't keep people from being able to go after opportunities and invest. Like that to me that's garbage. It's not. I don't believe that that's a good approach.
I totally agree.
I think that's outdated, and I think it's something hopefully in the near future that we'll be able to develop systems and platforms, and I think blockchain can be a central part of that with accountability, with transparency, with identity, with some of these different things where we can actually. It's not before in the old world when things were happening out in dark corners and you weren't able to watch and kind of monitor what was going on, or if something went wrong, be able to go look at a transparent record and see what happened. I think maybe some of these things made sense, but I think in a new world that we're building, I believe that some of those things can shift. So to come back directly to your question, through RegCF, we're setting up. So there's an app that we've been developing that's called Coin, COIIN, and some people in the crypto space are aware of it because we've talked about it and been dealing with some groups, and that's another project, Dragon Chain. And Joe has been, they've been advising us on that from a technical standpoint. And the goal with Coin is to set up a platform where users can promote and engage through their social networks on behalf of the movie, and they'll earn what is essentially like utility token or a reward point, which then can be redeemed for security tokens under RegCF if you're an unaccredited U.S. investor. So what that means is that basically you can earn a security token as opposed to having to just buy or invest in one.
Holy cow! That's
yeah.
Sweet. I haven't heard anything about this yet.
Yeah, so that's something that we again and there'll be a way I think for unaccredited investors to potentially participate with some investment, but the goal with that piece of the raise, because we're doing a large raise and we've already got a substantial amount of that already locked in, is not about raising huge amount of money in a crowd sale and doing what people were doing in ICOs a year and a half ago or whatever, which was fine, but that's not what we're doing with the movie. I mean, the goal with unaccredited investors, or really with the community at large, is to build a community around the movie that has a stake in the film, that has a vested interest to help us ensure that it's successful and to help us drive the marketing, in social media and online.
Right.
I mean, that's the premise. Basically 7 years ago, I crowdfunded and released on a direct-to-consumer, digital release, a documentary about extraterrestrials and government conspiracy and new energy. Serious.
And what's funny, dude, is I've seen that. I loved it, and I had no idea until last night, actually, that you were behind it. I knew you were behind Hickok, which I haven't seen, to be honest, because I'm not a big Western, cowboys guy. But I was like really shocked to realize, holy shit! Like, I'm all about UFOs, aliens, conspiracies. I love all that stuff. But yeah, that's cool as hell.
Yeah, so and it was a crazy thing. I mean, honestly, there's so many stories I have from that alone could fill up a multi-hour interview. But and even after we made the movie, crazy stuff happened to us. But the point in terms of how it informed what we're doing with the film is, by crowdfunding, we were the most successful crowdfund in history for a documentary until like 3 years ago, which the only documentaries to raise more were the ones that were other ones were done by Dr. Greer, who was using the same model and kind of email lists and everything we helped him to develop. But the point is, we crowdfunded the film. We released it subtitled in 17 languages 11 months later, and we did over $1 million in direct to consumer sales with zero marketing budget. So what that means is that 100% of the performance was drive through earned media and word of mouth, and essentially the community that had invested in the film, like in this case, they weren't even getting a stake in it. They weren't getting a return, which I wish they were, because I feel like your incentive to push would have even been greater.
Right.
And also, I just think it's fair. Like I think and I'm one of those people that when I do business with anyone, and everyone who deals with me knows this, it's like I like things to be equitable. Like there's no reason in the world we live in today for it to be any way other than that. So
Well, real quick, I have to ask you one question. Because of
yes.
Sirius and all of that, do you believe Bob Lazar's story?
Oh, and I know Jeremy Kenyon Lockyer Corbell. I don't know if you saw his documentary, but I do believe Bob Lazar's story, 100%.
I
I
do too.
think there's look and it's funny, before Jeremy made that documentary, which came out, I don't know if people have seen it. It's a really good
Really
documentary.
good.
It's really well done. One of the better documentaries that's been done in the space, in my opinion, especially stylistically and production value and all of that. He spent a lot of time just really doing a good job on it. And as someone who's done a documentary, I know the challenges of fitting that story in and hitting the right notes. Um, but when you listen to Bob Lazar talk, and I always felt this when I was doing research for our documentary, and I watched interviews with him, I'm like, and I showed it to our team. I said, for me, like if I check in just with my gut instinct, which is always for me the first most important thing, I 100% like he resonates as being truthful.
Right.
And then when you just think about it logically, it's like, think about all the ridicule this guy went through. Think about what his life turned into. Like the incentive he had to lie about that in some way, it's just not there. I know people will say like, well, what if he wanted a book deal? It's like, man, there's so many other better paths
Right.
to make money.
And
And
he's so
actually, the path he
tired.
was on,
He just
the
wants to
path
be
he was
left
on was
alone now.
more lucrative. Yeah, he was on a lucrative path. I mean, he was a government contractor that was making great money working inside of like the dark projects of the military industrial complex. I mean, that kind of money you make on that path, if he just kept going and kept his mouth shut, was a lot better than if he came out and he blew the whistle and he said, this is messed up, like people should know the truth.
Right.
And so that's, and he's one example. I mean, there's so many at this point. I honestly, my opinion, I know it's the statistics say 50% of people believe that there's other life out there, but I think it's higher than that. I
Way
think that
higher.
statistic is, I think it's way higher, in my opinion, just because with even just ancient aliens alone, as a cultural phenomenon, that already got people. It's not even about whether you think
There's a lot of
aliens
bullshit
built
in that, though. That's the only
well,
thing.
I know, I know, but it's not about whether you think aliens built the pyramids or not. It's honestly about, it gets you to question what the old version of history that was readily accepted, which has massive holes in it. Not to say that anyone lied, but it's like we basically take this much data in a sea of data and say this is what history is.
Right.
There's all this missing room for what actually really happened that we don't 100%
Which
know
drives
now.
me nuts because I wish I could just explore that, but it's almost impossible.
Not until you build a time machine and then
Right,
you can go
exactly.
explore it. But no, but the point is, I believe for us to think we're the only intelligent species in this entire universe is beyond arrogant. I'm 100%. I mean, the things I believe about that are pretty out there, but it didn't start that way. I didn't go to make a documentary being like, hey, I believe in extraterrestrials and I have to get the word out. I was like, I actually kind of fell into it. And over time, I did the research and have had a lot of experiences that illuminated things for me that helped me to see the world and our species and intelligent life in a certain way.
Mhm.
but I don't want to go too.
You and
far
I are going to
down
have a talk on this outside of the channel, because I'm curious what your far out beliefs are, because I'm sure ours probably match up pretty well. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Because I'm a little out there too, and if I could look real crazy real quick if I wanted to get into it. So okay, so let's go into a little bit about the investment side of this. And I think you mentioned it. Obviously, Leonardo DiCaprio and his production company are also behind this with you. You already have a pretty high list staple of talent lining up. I don't think anything has been, and nobody has been 100% confirmed yet, or anybody you can announce, right? But you've got a lot of opportunities here.
Yeah. So in terms of the casting, I mean, yeah, Leo and his company, they've been actually involved in the project much longer than we have. So originally, the writers approached Leo's company and got them on board to help with development. They brought it into the studio, that Paramount, that we acquired it from. So they've really been attached as a production company to this from the very beginning. It's actually one of the first early projects they took on as a production company, so they really love it and are very passionate about it, and they're awesome partners. But in terms of, so they're them, along with some of the major agencies like CAA, as well as a casting director named Mary Vernew, who's amazing, a really amazing woman she's like casting royalty. She did The Star Is Born. She's done over 300 movies. She's awesome, a really cool spiritual woman, and she's just she was the perfect fit for us. And when we met her, I was like, okay, you're leading the charge on this. So between them, we're going through the process. As any honest producer would tell you, the casting process, sometimes you just get lucky and you find the right fit right away. Sometimes it takes a while. So we've been patient and just kind of, again, you go in like not knowing, we know it's not going to be Tom Cruise or like Will Smith or someone that's not a right fit. So then it's about, okay, let's
find. You don't
think
Will Smith could play Nolan Bushnell?
No, well, it's funny because there is a company who was trying, when we came in to acquire the project with the writers, there was a company who was trying to move on the project at the same time, and they put up a list of potential actors that included Will Smith for some reason.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
hey, you never know, man. It's Hollywood. If anybody can pull it off, it'll be him or Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, no, and there is a moment where there's a call for more diversity, which is a good thing, but not when it's an inaccurate portrayal of a historical, a real person. And Nolan, in our feeling of it is like Nolan deserves his place in the pantheon of tech icons.
Absolutely.
Like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. These guys are all up there, and we feel like Nolan should be up there as well. And people in the video game and the tech community are familiar with Nolan, but outside of that, there's not a wide awareness of him, and we believe that this film will shift that, as it should, rightfully so. But yeah, go back to your original thought. So yeah, we're in the process of building that package out. It's going to be an A-list, level ensemble, not just for who's playing Nolan, but also his wife Nancy and some of the other roles. So, in that perspective, we're in a good spot. We're already been privately raising capital for some time, so we've got enough capital committed where we're already pushing the film. We're already greenlit the film, is using industry speak, which means as soon as the cast and our final distribution deal is locked, we'll be going into production. So the hope is that will be later this year.
Can you say how much left you need?
Well, I don't want to say that officially publicly, but I'll say that there's still, we have to raise 20 million just for the P&A or the marketing. So I'll say that there's still a substantial amount of that is left to be spoken for.
Okay.
And we don't have to necessarily raise the entire amount because there's going to be co-financiers on that marketing capital, but that's the realm we're into out of a $50 million total raise. So there's still ample opportunity for investors who want to get involved. And I know you and I had kind of talked about some interesting ideas, and I'm open. Again, I want to do some creative and innovative things, especially as it relates to crypto and blockchain. Not as much about how much capital we raise, but about being able to break new ground and do cool things that help promote this industry, and also help to promote the film and kind of drive what we're doing with that in a unique way too.
Well, can you explain? let's say So I'm thinking about it from a perspective of, if let's say I'm mining, right? Let's say I'm mining Bitcoin, okay? Because I'm mining Bitcoin and I'm mining other things. And, if I were mining Bitcoin, but maybe I wanted to invest that into a project like a movie, okay? Let's say I'm mining, I don't know, $1,000 worth of Bitcoin in a month. Okay. And I thought, okay, how can I make this $1,000? Like maybe Bitcoin doubles or triples over a certain period of time. But, if I owned a part of a movie, it would generate a return of investment of how long and how much. Like what would I expect to see out of something like that?
Well, yeah, that's the trick. That's the trick of when you get into any private equity investing in anything, not just movies. It's always a certain level of speculation, right? But I guess Bitcoin's no different. I mean, the price of Bitcoin is looking good now and is showing signs of jumping back into a bullish trend. But in the long term, what's going to happen with it? Now, if you believe in the core economics of that Satoshi designed and you believe in the model, I mean, with having coming up and all the various forces that are the confluence of forces that exist, I mean, it's not crazy to think that one Bitcoin could be worth 25, 50,000, 100,000. I mean, numbers that are pretty massive. But that being said, if you got in now and it's in its long term high with lots of volatility was 25 or 20,000, then you're only talking like 2.5x, right? Now, if our film, like I tell people a lot of times, look, there's 2 to 3 billion gamers around the world. If we get 5% of those to go see this in the theaters, we're talking $500 million worldwide at the box office. Just 5% of just the gamers. And that's not if we look at certain demographics, like if you're an Atari fan, like meaning you played Atari as a kid, but you're not a gamer now. You're like 45 years old and you like yoga and you eat granola, but you don't play video games. Well, you're going to want to go see this movie because this takes place in an era, a bygone era for you. It's that nostalgia of going back to the 70s when, when you were young and things were cool and hip and crazy or whatever. So it's, that's the other side of this is that, there's the older demographic of Atari fans. There's gamers, which are literally young and old of every shape and size and, every race, color, and creed on this earth. So that's those two demographics to us are so massive that if we hit the right numbers, I mean, you look at a movie like Bohemian Rhapsody. Bohemian Rhapsody came out 7 months ago or 8 months ago. It did almost $1 billion at the worldwide box office.
Wow.
It's a biopic. It's a biopic that takes place in the same time period as our movie. It has a global built-in audience / brand with Queen versus Atari. And if you talk to a lot of people in the gaming space, Atari is like one of the coolest retro brands that there is for games. And
people wear their T-shirts just because of the logo. So
yeah, because the logo and it's in Walmart and Urban Outfitters are selling their stuff, and so there's still a lot of brand equity in the Atari brand. And so when you take all those factors and you're like, okay, well, it's not far-fetched to say that this movie could do 300, 400, $500 million at the box office and do over 500 million in revenue around the world. Now, I can't, disclaimer, I cannot predict or promise any sort of certain specific performance. But if we hit those kind of numbers, then you're talking 5x, 6x, 10x on an investment in the film. That's what we're hoping. I mean, for us, obviously, we're all dancing in the street, producers, the talent, director, investors, everybody wins. And that's the goal. I mean, look, we designed some things with this economic model a little differently where because we're co-financing the P&A and we're co-financing production and all that, we're creating kind of a blended model where investors are recouping at the top of the waterfall, which means, as the marketing film money is recouped first before equity investors recoup their money, we're actually the total fund we're raising is participating in that. So token holders / shareholders, whatever you want to call them, are getting a slice of that early money at the top of the waterfall, which is not traditional.
It's not traditionally, yeah, because I've actually had opportunities in the past to get involved with projects, and you're typically the last to get anything out of an investment.
You're the last, and you get all the upside. We wanted to combine some hybrid version of that to say, look, we want the mitigated risk position of the top of the waterfall, and we want the upside of the equity. And so that's why we created the structure we did. And part of it was driven by, again, to be one of the first films, or the first big film, at least that I know of, that's really properly leveraging the technology. We had to make sure that, like, okay, we set up a model where token holders or shareholders are seeing, substantial distributions as early as possible, because from a PR standpoint, you don't want to have, oh, this movie, tokenized, and then investors all got burned. Like, that's the last thing we wanted. So we wanted instead the opposite narrative, which is, this movie tokenized and investors all saw nice returns and everyone's excited about it. And everyone's jumped up about it. And that will help, kind of pave the way for other filmmakers, other production companies, other platforms that are being built that are saying, look, let's create new models, new ecosystems for how, the film business can go forward and can not only, form capital, but also get, build its community from the beginning. I think that's to us, like, the kind of one of the biggest values of what we're doing. So
what is, so I'm getting some chat questions. What is the elevator pitch to those in the generation that have no idea who Nolan Bushnell is? So, I mean, some people are vaguely even familiar with what Atari is, believe it or not. So what's there? I mean, I'm thinking, like, you need like a giant mining conglomerate. You need like a big Bitcoin mining conglomerate, or just even a big mining group to just go out, mine Bitcoin for the movie for like a month and then be done with it. And then, and that's it. And you wouldn't even have to spend a whole bunch of time with everything else. But a lot of these people that are mining Bitcoin, these younger guys who are out there hustling in crypto, they don't even know who Nolan Bushnell is. But he's actually kind of like a Wolf of Wall Street kind of character. Like, this guy was crazy, but in a good way. Like, he was a maverick. He was like, who is Nolan Bushnell?
Yeah, who is Nolan Bushnell? So the movie, I always describe it, it's kind of the DNA of the film is like Wolf of Wall Street meets The Social Network. Nolan's story and who Nolan is, I mean, when you talk about video games, like, I describe it like this to a lot of people. Like, this movie is like Passion of the Christ for video gamers. So if you're, and I know it seems kind of like a twisted way to look at it,
except
but
it doesn't die at the end.
It's it's the origin story of video games. I mean, it's the origin story not just of video games really, but of the whole tech revolution. Because honestly, if there's no Nolan Bushnell, there's no telling, like, where does, who's the guy that gives Steve Jobs and Wozniak the incubation they need to find their way with computers. And if that doesn't happen, where does Microsoft happen? And there's so many dominoes that if you trace them back, they find their roots, in Nolan and in Atari. Like, Nolan has his place. Like, that's why when I looked at it, I took a step back and I said, look, the reality is for us to, and that's why we called the token the Bushnell token, was in my mind, George Washington's face is on the quarter. Nolan Bushnell's face should be on a blockchain token, because he's one of the founding fathers of the entire tech revolution. So everything that's happening with blockchain and crypto, in some way, everyone should pay homage to Nolan, that he had his place in laying the foundations for it. It's not him alone. Again, there's a whole slew of guys. There's thousands of engineers, nameless guys, that have built technology, and they're not the most social dudes. They're not the guys like out in the front, but that have built technology for, the last 30, 40 years. But Nolan was one of those pioneers, one of those leaders, one of those innovators that helped, pave the way forward for digital technology to reach the masses. And so that's where, there's multiple reasons why, for the younger generation, if there's different layers to what you're asking me. So if you're an investor, there's a different conversation about a younger investor. What are the benefits, or what makes sense about getting involved with this? And you have to, again, this isn't like a pump and dump. I'm going to sell you a token at 5 cents and we're going to pump it to 50 and you dump it and run in 8 months or something. Like, this isn't that kind of a deal. You have to invest in this because you believe in the economics of the venture itself and the project. If you don't, then that's why people are doing it, is because they do believe in the economics of it. The secondary market liquidity of security token markets is still new and is still developing. We believe in it for the long term and hopefully the medium term, but how that's going to take hold and when and where, nobody knows the exact answer. But So investors, you've got to look at it and weigh it on the merits of how you would measure any solid investment. Now, when you're talking about the audience and engaging the younger audience, it's a different discussion. And I believe, and this is a fun movie. Again, you talk about Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, Nolan basically was one of the first guys to create this wild new corporate culture in Silicon Valley. So when he showed up, guys were still wearing a suit and a tie, and they were soldering computer boards together. So he worked at Ampex, which was one of the first kind of digital companies in Silicon Valley there that was manufacturing motherboards and computer chips and different things. So you literally in the film see guys wearing, early on, Nolan's working at a place where it's like, it's like hell. And he creates Atari. It's like he basically has people smoking weed in the factory to come up with ideas, and has this whole different corporate culture where it's like, parties and orgies and a bunch of crazy stuff, because he was like, look, if you're doing your work and you're performing and we're delivering, which they were outperforming, they were out innovating the competition. All the big game companies turned Nolan down. He basically gave them all a chance to invest in his idea. They all rejected him and laughed him out of the room and said, no kid's going to play video games, which we obviously all know how that story ended up.
Right.
But the funny thing is he went and he bootstrapped it. He basically became a millionaire off quarters, built the fastest growing company in American history, just off of this new idea that you don't have to have people like boxed in and you have to show up at 9 and leave at 5. He would let people work at the hours they wanted to work. He would let them work in the way they wanted to work. He'd let them dress the way they wanted. Yeah, he let them dress the way they wanted to dress. So to me, that there's things about Nolan's story that are transcendent beyond just being about the origin story of video games, which in and of itself I think is valuable, especially to gamers. But when you look at what it takes to come up with an idea, but not just visualize it, but create it in the world, like that's where we're at a unique point as a species. And I believe the only way that human race makes the evolutionary leap forward that we have to make in order to get ourselves out of the situation we're in and into a better situation is through innovation. And I believe it's not about like 5 big companies doing it. And this is where blockchain comes in, and the whole, not just philosophy, but the actual technology itself. It's about a decentralized movement of creation, of innovation that needs to happen around the world to solve all the major problems that we're facing. And Nolan's story is the perfect archetype. You talk about like Campbell and the hero's journey, and there's a certain hero's journey element to Nolan, but his story in and of itself is the archetype of that consummate innovator entrepreneur that sees a problem and sees a way to solve it, and boom, just goes and creates it. And I think that by inspiring young people that whatever their dream is, no matter how crazy they think it is, when you look at it in the big picture, everyone told Nolan Bushnell that it was crazy that no kids were going to play video games. We all know how that story ends. People are going to see in the movie in a very entertaining way, how does that story end? And hopefully it will inspire them that no matter what their dream is, no matter how crazy it is, they have to go out, they have to go create it, because that's how we create a better world. And that's ultimately I think the bigger, if we get to the center core of what this is about and what this story is about and what this project's about, I believe that's what will drive young people to engage and really gravitate and hopefully have this film resonate with them in a powerful way as an audience.
And what kind of time frame are you looking to have the funding round wrapped up? Is there a time limit on this, or is this the film will start shooting once this is done? Like, how is this all structured?
We're already on the path to push this into production as soon as the cast and the rest of the pieces we're lining up fall into place. I would say the private round that we're doing will be wrapped up probably by early September at the latest.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, it's possible. Look, we say that. Could it push into mid-September or beginning of October? Of course. It could also happen faster. I mean, there's groups that we're talking to that are trying to close down everything that's left. So, and obviously there's a portion I'm keeping aside for, again, that more public, the more public reg CF or the unaccredited piece of this will roll out at the right moment as it relates to marketing the film. So I view that the movement from the launch of that all the way through the release of the film as like one continuous motion for the project. So that's how I look at that particular that piece of the equation is that public, that public piece of it. We'll launch it, and we'll ride it all the way up until the release. So that'll happen sometime, probably early. I would say late this year would be the earliest. But it's probably more like early next year. We'll launch into the more crowd-funded part, of what we're doing with this whole endeavor. So, but in terms of like private equity investors, high net worth crypto investors, accredited U.S. or unaccredited foreign investors, that's happening right now, and people can get in touch with you or get in touch with me, and we can onboard them if it's something they want to get involved in.
So what's the what's the website that people can go to get more information, and like, is there a white paper? What can they do?
Well, there's not a white paper, but there is a deck. It's not, I don't have it posted publicly, but if they reach out to you, you can get them in touch with me, or we can get them access to it. That part of the raise is a bit more traditional, because again, we're not just throwing it, out there to the masses, that part of it yet. It's more about, we've been raising capital privately, and so yeah, there's a website called atarimovie.co, which people can sign up for just the regular email list. But if you want to invest, I'll put my straight email out there if people want to contact me directly. It's jd@visiontree.co. And that's the easiest way to reach out to me directly, but feel free to reach out to Jason as well. And yeah, I'm happy to, answer any questions and engage with people that have interest in the project from there.
Okay. And I want to real quick let everybody know this was not paid at all. JD's not paying me anything. This is definitely just, JD's a cool ass dude. We've been in touch now on and off for, almost, a year and a half at least. And it's just a hell of a project, and I really wanted to be a part of it in any way that I could, and he's just somebody who's open to just about everything. So yeah, I just want to make sure people understand that you didn't pay me to be here.
Not just about everything, but I am an open-minded guy.
Yeah.
Don't get any crazy ideas. No, but I want to say the same. Look, Jason, when I met you, right off the bat, like I usually get a pretty good read on people, and I immediately was like, okay, you're authentic, you're genuine, and you're somebody that I want to work with for the long run. And I immediately knew that, and I'm just happy to be on with you today, and happy that we're connected. So
absolutely, man. Well, look, this has been cool. I want to keep people up to date with what's going on with this project, and like you said, if you're interested in getting involved, either contact me or him. And that's it for now. We made it 48 minutes. It's 1:10. Go enjoy the rest of your afternoon, good sir.
Thank you, buddy. And I'll have more updates, and we'll jump back on here and get it out to you guys.
Anytime.
All
right. See you, bud. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was JD Seraphine. Amazing guy. Like he's the most humble. He's just the sweetest, nicest, hardworking guy. So if you guys want to get involved in the project, make sure you reach out. Atari movie, it's going to be big, and I'm really, really super excited about it. So I wanted to address a couple things real quick for those that have been kind of hanging out. Let me see here. Where is my... trying to find my... There we go. Let's see. I'm going to go over Bitcoin a little bit, just real quick. Because as I was talking about yesterday... where are we at now? It's back to 11:12. So yeah, I got another sell signal. This is on a 30-minute chart. So on a 4-hour, you're probably not seeing this yet, but I still think there's a chance for us to hit, like I said last night, like I said a week ago, I think there's a very good chance that we're going to hit 8,500. Resistance line right here is at 10.9. I think we will likely break that. We tried here. And then we'll see. We'll see what happens. We've got a ways to go on a 30-minute chart. It looks like almost infinity. Like how could we ever possibly hit that low? But I think it's very possible. On a 4-hour chart, you'll see it's much more. It's much easier to see. So look, Bitcoin, it's going to do what it's going to do. But I think we're still probably likely could be. Not 100%, but I think it's likely we're going to hit 8,500 before we get back to 20,000, and then altcoin rally is my guess. So until next time, guys, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you. I know interviews, interviews don't typically get as many live viewers for me. I could have 800 live viewers on some things and then, 50 or 60 on some others. But I think this is going to pick up steam as things move forward, and I want to make sure everybody got a chance to be a part of it. So until next time, guys, crow your coins. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again soon.